7:15 a.m. Boston Airport. The loudspeaker was announcing flights. People hurried past with rolling suitcases, and I stood at the airline counter with a trembling ticket in my hand. On the screen in front of me, the words appeared slowly, as if mocking me. "Your return ticket has been cancelled." "There must be some mistake," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the noise. But the reply didn't come from the airline worker. It came from just behind me. "No mistake, Evelyn," my daughter-in-law said. "We bought you a one-way ticket. You're flying, but you're not coming back." She didn't even try to hide her smile. My son stood beside her in silence. He didn't deny it. He didn't protect me. Then she added, with a calmness that cut through me, "It's time you accept reality. We don't need you anymore." The sound of the loudspeaker blurred. The floor beneath me seemed to shift. How could they do this to me? If you want to hear the full story, subscribe. Because this is the truth families never speak about. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I was a cardiac nurse for 27 years at St. Mary's Hospital in Boston. I worked long shifts, sometimes 16 hours straight. I held strangers' hands when their hearts failed, and I whispered prayers over them when machines went silent. I saw families crumble and reconcile beside hospital beds. Through all of it, I believed one thing without question: family is everything. When my husband David died, that belief became my lifeline. He was my steady hand, my late-night laughter, the hum that filled every quiet in our home. Losing him felt like losing the rhythm of my own heart. But I told myself I would be all right. Because I still had Daniel, our only son. My pride. My purpose. My love. I remember the day he was born. A July morning heavy with heat, sunlight spilling through the window as I counted his fingers. I promised him then, and every day after, that he would never face this world alone. When he grew older, I kept that promise. I worked extra shifts to pay for his tuition at Northeastern. When he wanted to buy his first house, I co-signed the loan. When his second child was born prematurely, I covered the hospital bills without hesitation. And whenever he said, "Mom, I'll pay you back," I smiled and told him, "You already have." Because love, I thought, wasn't something you balanced in numbers. His wife, Victoria, entered our lives 10 years ago. She was beautiful, elegant in that way people are when they know they're being watched. She had perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect answers. At first, I was grateful that Daniel had found someone to love him. She was attentive, charming, and always spoke in that soft tone that makes you believe she's sincere. But something about her eyes unsettled me. They were never really looking at me. Always through me or past me, as though calculating what to take next. The first time I noticed a shift was subtle. It was Thanksgiving, maybe a year after the wedding. I brought out my old china, the set David and I had saved up for during our first decade together. It had belonged to my mother before me. When I placed it on the table, Victoria laughed lightly and said, "Oh, these look vintage. Maybe you should let me order something more modern for next time." Her tone was casual, almost teasing, but I felt the sting underneath. After dinner, as we cleared the table, she asked, "Evelyn, have you ever thought about moving to a smaller place? That big house must be a lot to handle now that you're alone. Daniel and I could move in and help, and you could downsize to something easier." I remember smiling, thinking it was kindness. I said, "That's sweet of you, dear, but this is home. I'm fine." She smiled back, but her eyes didn't. Now I know it wasn't kindness. It was reconnaissance. In the months that followed, little things began to shift. Daniel started referring to my home as the property. When I suggested family dinners, they were always too busy. But when bills arrived or repairs came up, Daniel called right away. "Mom, could you cover this just until next month? Mom, the kids' tuition deadline is close. Can you send a quick transfer? Mom, it's just temporary. You know I'll make it up to you." And I believed him. Because that's what mothers do. We believe. I never noticed how my financial independence slowly turned into dependency. Theirs on mine. It wasn't sudden. It crept in like ivy, quiet and green, until it covered everything. When I looked at my bank app, I would see small transfers missing here and there. A few hundred for emergencies. Then a few thousand for down payments. All with promises attached. Promises that never came back. I didn't mind then. I thought I have enough. Let them live a little easier. But love given without limit becomes expectation. And expectation without gratitude becomes entitlement. By the third year after David's passing, I realized I was funding almost every aspect of their lives. The mortgage, the cars, the vacations, the private school for the children. When I'd mention it, Daniel would laugh and say, "Come on, Mom, it's all family money. You can't take it with you." He'd kiss my cheek and thank me like he was doing me a favor. It was around that time Victoria began handling more of their family finances. She would send me polite, business-like messages. "Evelyn, could you transfer the usual amount by Friday? The kids' dance classes are due. I'll forward you the invoice." Always efficient. Always precise. Never warm. I told myself it was fine. That maybe this was modern family life. Shared accounts, shared burdens, shared love. But deep down I began to feel it. The shift. The silence after my calls went unanswered. The way Daniel's tone changed from affectionate to distracted. The way Victoria's thank yous turned into expectations. I told myself it was grief. That maybe we were all still healing. But grief doesn't erase gratitude. And theirs had vanished. Sometimes when the house was quiet, I'd stand in the kitchen with the fridge humming behind me and the clock ticking too loudly. I'd look at the empty chairs where my family used to sit, and I'd whisper, "Where did I go wrong?" I still believed then that love could fix anything. That if I just kept giving, they'd eventually see me, not as a resource but as their mother. Now I know better. Love without boundaries doesn't save a family. It feeds their greed until they forget you were ever human. The first real crack appeared not in a loud argument, but in a quiet conversation over tea. It was early spring, the kind of morning when the light feels new. I had baked lemon scones, Daniel's favorite since he was 10. He and Victoria had stopped by on their way somewhere, though I noticed they hadn't stayed for breakfast in months. We sat at the kitchen table where the varnish had worn away from years of elbows and laughter. I poured them tea, trying to stretch the visit longer than their schedule would allow. Victoria sipped hers, then set the cup down carefully, too carefully, and said, "Mom, have you ever thought about what you'll do when you can't manage this place anymore?" Her tone was light, but her words landed like a chill. I said, "I manage fine." She smiled. "Of course you do. I just mean it's a big house. A lot of work for one person. Maybe you could sell and live closer to us. You'd have less stress and we could help with your finances." I looked at Daniel. He stared at his phone. That was the moment something quiet shifted in me. It wasn't the question, it was the assumption hidden beneath it. As if my independence was now a problem to be solved. I said gently, "My finances are fine, dear." She replied, "That's good. Because you wouldn't want to leave a mess for anyone to deal with later." She smiled again. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. That day, after they left, I stood in the doorway watching their car drive away. The sound of the engine fading into the cold morning air. For the first time, I didn't feel like family. I felt like an obstacle they were already planning around. Weeks passed, and the little remarks multiplied. "Mom, you shouldn't drive that far alone anymore. Mom, maybe you should let us manage your accounts. It's too much for you. Mom, you could just sign over the utilities, it'd be simpler." Each suggestion was wrapped in concern. Each one chipped away at something I hadn't realized was fragile, my authority over my own life. Then came the afternoon Daniel brought up the will. He said it so casually I almost missed it. "Hey Mom, you should probably update your will. Make sure everything's in order. Vic's uncle's a lawyer, he can help." I remember the sound of the fridge clicking on behind me, the hum filling the silence before I answered. "I already have a lawyer," I said. He looked mildly annoyed. "I just meant it would save you money." I smiled faintly. "Daniel, I think I can afford my own peace of mind." He didn't press further that day, but something in his expression told me the conversation wasn't over. Around that time I started noticing missing pieces, not money but details. An unopened letter from the bank that wasn't in its usual drawer. A call from my insurance company confirming a recent inquiry I hadn't made. A voice message about joint account verification. When I asked Daniel, he brushed it off. "Oh, that's just because we used your address for some paperwork. Don't worry, Mom, I handled it." Handled it. Those words stayed with me. I started keeping a small notebook beside the phone. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every call. I didn't want to be suspicious, but instinct whispered that something was shifting beneath the surface of my own household. I found out later how right I was. But before the truth came, I kept trying to hold the family together. Birthdays, dinners, holidays, I hosted them all. I'd stand in the kitchen with the scent of rosemary chicken filling the air, hoping laughter would return like it used to. It didn't. They arrived late, left early, and spent most of the evening scrolling through their phones or talking about property investments I barely understood. When I offered advice, Victoria would smile tightly and say, "Oh, Evelyn, the market's changed. It's not like in your day." In my day, as if I belonged to another century, another world. The grandchildren were the only light left in those visits. They would run through the hallway, their small footsteps echoing, their laughter bouncing off the walls. But even they began repeating things I didn't expect. "Daddy says you should live somewhere smaller, Grandma. Mommy says you forget things a lot." I laughed it off each time, but the laughter caught in my throat. I started talking to David's photograph more often, the one in the silver frame by my bed. "Did you see this coming?" I'd ask softly. Did I raise him too gently? Or not gently enough? I wasn't ready to admit it then, but a distance had formed that no amount of giving could bridge. I was financing their lives and losing my place in them at the same time. The first crack had appeared, and though it looked small, I knew from the hospital years that fractures, left untreated, always spread quietly until something vital gives way. That knowledge came back to me one night as I balanced my checkbook at the kitchen table. The numbers didn't lie. I was slowly disappearing into their comfort. I sat there for a long time, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge and the faint ticking of the clock. I pressed my hand against the wood of the table, the same table where Daniel once built his first science project, and whispered, "Not yet. You don't get to take this from me. Not yet." After David's funeral, the air in my house changed. It wasn't grief anymore, it was convenience. I became the person they called for what they needed, not who they wanted to see. At first, I tried not to notice. I told myself Daniel was busy, that Victoria was tired, that the children were growing. But small things began to sting in ways I couldn't ignore. They started arriving without calling, letting themselves in with the spare key I'd given them years ago. The door would open, footsteps down the hallway, and a familiar voice calling, "Mom, we just need to grab something from the garage." No hello. No how are you. Just purpose. One Saturday morning I found Victoria in my study. She was standing by my desk, scrolling through her phone, a pile of unopened envelopes beside her. "Vic," I said gently, "why are you in here?" She smiled, smooth as always. "I was just helping. Sorting your mail. You get so many bank statements, it must be confusing." I walked over and picked up the stack. My hands shook slightly. I like to handle my own things. Her smile didn't falter, but her tone sharpened just enough to cut. "We're just trying to make your life easier." They left soon after. When the door closed, I locked it for the first time in years. I leaned against the frame, the wood cool against my back, and realized something had shifted permanently. From then on, their requests came with less hesitation. "Mom, the van broke down. Can you loan us a few thousand? We'll pay you next month." "Mom, the kids' summer program is expensive, but you don't want them to miss out, do you?" "Mom, the credit card limit is tight. Can we use your account for a bit?" And every time the word mom sounded less like love and more like leverage. When I tried to talk about spending time together, meals, holidays, weekends, Daniel always had a reason. Work. Stress. The kids' schedules. Once I called him on a quiet Sunday afternoon. "Daniel," I said, "I made your favorite stew. Why don't you come by?" He sighed, almost impatiently. "Mom, we've got plans today. You don't have to cook for me anymore, okay? Relax." He didn't mean it cruelly, but it landed that way. I sat with the phone still in my hand after he hung up, the scent of stew filling the kitchen, the pot still warm, untouched. I began noticing how the rhythm of our relationship had changed. When they needed help, their voices softened. When I needed company, the line went cold. Once I tried to set a small boundary. I told them I couldn't cover another car payment. "I've helped a lot already," I said. "You and Victoria need to manage on your own a bit." Victoria smiled, that familiar, polished smile. "Of course. But you wouldn't want the kids to go without, would you?" The words weren't loud, but they struck the one place she knew would hurt, the part of me that still believed family means sacrifice. So I gave in. Again. I started withdrawing from my savings to cover their needs. Each transaction felt like cutting off a small piece of myself, but I kept doing it, because I told myself it was temporary, because mothers are supposed to give. Then came the birthday that should have told me everything. My 65th. I set the table for 6, bought a small cake from the bakery, even put on the necklace David gave me on our 25th anniversary. At 7 the candles were ready. By 8 the frosting began to melt. By 9 I finally blew out the candles alone. Daniel texted the next morning, "Sorry, Mom. We lost track of time. We'll come next week." They never did. After that, something hardened in me. I began to watch, quietly, the way nurses do when something feels off with a patient but the chart looks normal. I didn't accuse. I observed. Bills came late, statements arrived already opened, and small amounts disappeared from my joint account. One that Daniel had helped me set up for emergencies. When I mentioned it, he brushed me off. "Mom, banks make mistakes all the time. Don't stress about it." I knew better. I'd spent years reconciling charts and numbers at the hospital. Patterns tell stories. And the story here was clear. They had grown comfortable treating my life as their resource. The next turning point came one rainy afternoon. Daniel stopped by unexpectedly, shaking off his coat. "Mom," he said, "you've been working too hard keeping this house up. Vic and I were thinking, it's time for a little break. Trip maybe. Somewhere warm. We'll plan it together." A trip. The word felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. I wanted to believe it. Maybe this was his way of reconnecting, of saying sorry without saying it. He showed me photos of beaches and palm trees on his phone. "You need a change of scenery," he said. "You deserve it." He was right about that, at least. I didn't know then what kind of trip it would be, or how it would end, but I remember the way he smiled when I agreed. The relief in his eyes. The way Victoria's voice softened as she hugged me goodbye that day. I thought they were finally bringing me back into their circle. I didn't realize they were drawing a circle around me and closing it. That night, as I packed a small suitcase, I looked at David's photograph again. The light from the lamp touched his face just enough to make the glass glint. I whispered, "Maybe this is a new start, love. Maybe it's time to heal." If only I had known. Daniel booked everything, or so he said. He sent me the itinerary with palm trees in the header, and San Diego 3 nights of ocean air, typed below. March 12th to 15th. He wrote, "Mom, pack light. We'll take care of the rest." I printed the email and slid it into my travel folder, the plastic sleeve David and I use for trips. I tucked his photograph inside. The morning of the flight smelled like coffee and wet pavement. I locked the back door, felt the weight of my keys, and told the house I'd be back Sunday. At the curb, Daniel hugged me with one arm while scrolling with the other. Victoria kissed the air beside my cheek. "This will be good for you," she said. A reset. At the airport, the loudspeaker kept announcing final calls. I held my purse close and my ticket tighter. The check-in agent smiled and asked for my ID. I slid it over. She typed, frowned gently, and asked for my return confirmation. I handed the printout. Her eyes flicked. Then she turned the screen toward me. "Your return ticket has been canceled," it said. "There must be some mistake," I whispered. Before the agent could answer, Victoria's reflection appeared in the glossy counter. "No mistake," she said. "We bought you a one-way ticket. You're flying, but you're not coming back." Daniel stood beside her. He didn't deny it. He didn't protect me. The agent looked from them to me. "Ma'am, do you still want to check this bag?" I stared at my suitcase. "No," I said. "I'll carry on." We moved through security like people who knew exactly where they were going. Only I didn't. My hands shook. I kept counting. Wallet, phone, boarding pass, photograph. At the gate, Victoria crossed one leg and said lightly, "We've arranged something special for you. A peaceful place. Private care. Ocean views. You'll have activities, nurses, everything handled. You can finally rest." "Rest," I said. "I'm 65, not 95. She smiled without warmth. "You get tired. You forget things. It's time you accept reality." I turned to Daniel. "Is that true?" He rubbed his neck. Mom, it's temporary. Just while we get things sorted. The house, the accounts. It's safer for you. The house. The word lodged like a fishbone. What about my house? It's too much for you, Victoria said evenly. We spoke to a realtor. With the market high, it's smarter to list now. We'll manage paperwork while you adjust. Adjust, I repeated. And my return ticket? There isn't one, she said. We'll visit after the closing. The intercom announced a boarding group. My pulse kept the old nurse's rhythm. I opened my bank app. Transfers I didn't recognize. A card linked to my profile. An authorized user I hadn't added. Cold clarity replaced shock. Who changed my account? I asked. Daniel exhaled. We did. You weren't keeping up. We needed to make sure bills were paid. It's all family. It's not your money, I said quietly. It will be, Victoria murmured. Sooner or later. I stood. The line inched forward. I reached into my coat and felt the sealed envelope I had put there weeks before, the one with attorney Gabriel Harper's card and a note to myself. If they try to move you off your own life, go to the plan. At the counter I asked the agent to print my boarding pass. And confirm the return was cancelled? I said. She nodded. Voided yesterday at 4:52 p.m. A timestamp. Evidence. Thank you. Back at the seats, Victoria said. Don't make this dramatic. We're doing what's best. What's best for whom? I asked. For everyone. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert I hadn't created. Intake, Pacific Crest Residence, 2:30 p.m. Address in La Jolla. Contact, Director Myers. Note. Family to bring meds list po. A steadier anger rose, clean and quiet. You scheduled an intake, I said. Did you forge a power of attorney? We have guidance, Victoria said. I looked at my son. Daniel. He swallowed. Vic handled the details. Final boarding sounded. I picked up my bag and David's photo. I'll take the flight, I said. It will give me time to think. Victoria's smile returned. Good choice. What she didn't see was the message I typed to Gabriel before we took off. Emergency. Meet me at arrivals. Today. I powered down my phone, tucked the envelope deeper and sat by the window. As the plane lifted, Boston fell away like a page turning. I pressed the photograph to the tray and whispered, You won't like what they tried to do, David. But you'll like what I'm going to do next. The clouds opened. I closed my eyes and made a list, each step like a heartbeat. Freeze, revoke, transfer, remove. Not revenge. Procedure. When we landed in San Diego, the air smelled like eucalyptus. I walked off the jet bridge ahead of them and followed the signs toward baggage claim. The attorney texted, I'm here. I didn't look back. Behind me, Victoria said almost sweetly, Turn left here, Evelyn. We'll handle the forms. I kept walking straight. Yes, I walked past the sign for ground transportation and felt the old nurse in me return. The part that takes a crisis and lays it out on a tray, item by item, until nothing is hiding. The air smelled like coffee and jet fuel. My phone buzzed again. Intake to 30 p.m. I took a screenshot. Evidence. Gabriel found me near the escalators, tall, calm, wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Brooks. Evelyn, I said. They canceled my return. They scheduled an intake I did not choose. And I believe they modified my accounts. He nodded once. Let's sit where it's quiet. We found a bench under a poster of a beach I suddenly didn't want to see. I opened my folder. Out slid the printed itinerary, the alert with the address in La Jolla, and a small stack of mail I'd brought to sort on the plane. I handed him my phone. He read quickly. Do you have banking access here? I opened the app. The numbers stared back like unblinking eyes. There, I said, tapping a series of entries. For transfers. February 9th, February 22nd, March 3rd, March 11th. Family expenses. Small enough to feel harmless. Large enough to matter. Authorized user. Added January 28th at 4:52 p.m. Same minute as the cancelled return. Gabriel's pen hovered. And the account ending in 6742? That's mine alone, I said. Or it was. We moved like colleagues now. I forwarded him the email titled, Updated Travel Confirmation. where the return line showed voided. I pulled a letter that had bothered me for weeks. Notice of change homeowner's policy. The correspondence address wasn't my street. It was Daniel's. Did you change this? He asked. No. Then someone else did. For a moment the noise of the terminal faded. I thought of my kitchen, the vase of daffodils by the sink, the silver frame on my nightstand. None of those things had changed. I no longer believed that the people I loved would choose the right thing when it cost them comfort. Gabriel's voice was even. Here is what we know. 1. A pattern of transactions that favor them. 2. A paper trail that relocates your mail. 3. A canceled return linked to a placement you did not authorize. 4. Possible misrepresentation around powers of attorney. Do you have one on file? Yes, I said. Durable. Signed 3 years ago. I named no one. Witnessed and notarized. Good, he said. Then any claim that your son or daughter-in-law has authority is, right now, assertion not fact. I exhaled. Evelyn, he said, answer plainly. Do you feel safe returning with them today? I looked toward the sliding doors. Victoria stood nearby with the brochure. Daniel was on his phone, jaw tight. The familiar pull to keep the peace tried to drag me back. No, I said. The word felt like a step onto solid ground. Then we act, he said. First, document. Second, distance. Third, secure. I gathered what he asked for. I photographed the ticket counter screen. I saved the calendar alert with the intake time. I forwarded the La Jolla address and the contact, Director Myers. I wrote down the phrases they used at the gate. It's temporary. We'll manage the accounts. It will be ours sooner or later. Anything else? Gabriel asked. I remembered Victoria in my study, the open mail, her line. You wouldn't want to leave a mess. I told him everything. Dates, rooms, the smell of lemon cleaner, the angle of her phone over my desk. He didn't interrupt. He just wrote. When we finished, he said, I'm going to place some calls. Stay in public view. If they approach, you may say calmly that you're speaking with counsel. I nodded. The fear changed shape. It wasn't a storm now, it was a map. While he spoke into his phone, Daniel walked over. Mom, where did you go? We need to meet the driver. I won't be going with you, I said. He blinked. What? I am not consenting to any placement. And I'm not discussing my finances at an airport. He glanced at Gabriel, who had returned and stood beside me. Who is this? My attorney, I said. Victoria arrived, anger wrapped in politeness. Evelyn, this is unnecessary. What's unnecessary, I said, is booking me into a facility and canceling my return. People around us pretended not to listen. The board clicked to a new line of departures. Gabriel's tone stayed courteous. Good afternoon. Please direct any further communication to me. Miss Brooks will not be leaving with you today. For a second I saw my son at 5, cheeks flushed, reaching for my hand. Then the image faded, and a man stood willing to trade his mother for convenience. The grief that rose was clean and bearable. I turned slightly away and texted a locksmith. I texted my bank manager. I texted my neighbor to watch the driveway. Then I slid David's photograph back into the folder. I know what you tried to do, I said softly. I see it now. And clarity, I realized, was a kind of mercy. It allowed me to choose myself without apology, and to do it by the book. I felt steady. Now, that same evening, after a night in a modest airport hotel, I sat on the bed with my suitcase open and every document spread before me like surgical instruments. Years of nursing had taught me one thing. When something is bleeding, you don't panic. You locate the source, you apply pressure, and you stop the loss before it spreads. By dawn, I knew exactly where to press. I started with the bank. I called the direct number to the branch where I'd kept my accounts for 20 years. The same voice answered, Margaret, the manager who'd once brought muffins to my retirement party. Evelyn, she said, surprised. Are you all right? I will be, I said. But I need to freeze every joint account connected to my name. Immediately. There was a pause. Both the household and investment accounts? All of them. Effective now. She hesitated only long enough to type. Done. The system's locked. Do you want new credentials? Yes. New cards, new passwords, new everything. I'll pick them up in person. When I ended the call, I felt something unfamiliar. Quiet strength returning through the phone line. Next, I contacted my credit card company and revoked all authorized users. I could almost see Victoria's screen lighting up somewhere. An alert appearing. Access denied. Then I opened my laptop and logged into the county property records. The small piece of land in Maine that David and I had bought years ago was listed under my sole ownership. I clicked through the forms to list it for sale. A modest plot, but enough to fund independence for the next step. By mid-morning, Gabriel arrived with coffee and a folder thicker than before. "You work fast," he said. "I was trained to move before the pulse fades," I replied. He smiled. "Then let's keep it beating. We'll file a notice of fraud and power of attorney challenge today. We'll also initiate a temporary protective order for your assets." "Do it," I said. We spent 3 hours in a quiet office downtown, signatures and timestamps building a paper wall between me and the people who had once called themselves my family. Each page felt lighter than the one before. At noon I called Daniel. I needed him to hear my voice once more. Not to argue but to be clear. He answered on the second ring. "Mom, where are you? Vic's worried sick." "No, she isn't," I said evenly. "And you know why I left." He started to protest, but I continued, calm and measured. "The accounts are frozen. The property sale will finalize soon. I've changed every access point. I want no further contact except through my attorney." Silence stretched. Then disbelief. "Mom, you can't just, this is a misunderstanding. You've been manipulated." "No," I said. "I've been patient. There's a difference." I ended the call before his excuses could take shape. Gabriel helped me file a formal notice at the police department. Routine procedure to document financial manipulation. No drama, no confrontation. Just clean records. By evening, my phone was heavy with messages. 16 missed calls from Daniel. 4 from Victoria. 2 voicemails filled with half pleas, half threats. "We can fix this if you just come home. You're overreacting. Think of the children." I thought of them, yes. That's why I couldn't go back. That night, I checked into a small inn near the harbor. I sat by the window, watching the reflection of the streetlights on the water. For the first time in months, I could breathe without permission. The next morning, Gabriel handed me the revised will. "The last step. I've followed your instructions," he said. "Your estate will now transfer entirely into the Evelyn Brooks Trust. The funds will support women over 60 who've experienced familial financial abuse. It's airtight." I took the pen, my hand steady. "Include a note," I said, "that love is not a contract, and trust is not inheritance." He nodded. Simple and true. I signed. The pen clicked softly, a final heartbeat of the old life. After he left, I packed my things. A small canvas bag, the photograph of David, my mother's scarf, and the new set of keys I'd picked up from the real estate agent that morning. The house in Vermont wasn't large, 2 bedrooms, white siding, a porch overlooking a lake. But when I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the air smelled of cedar and possibility. I set the photograph on the mantel and whispered, "We made it, love." The phone vibrated once more. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I brewed a cup of tea, the steam rising in the quiet, and felt the world rearrange itself into something simple, mine. By the time the sun slipped behind the trees, the legal wheels had already turned. Letters had gone out to their address, to the bank, to the mortgage company. Every tether cut cleanly, lawfully. This wasn't revenge. It was procedure. It was the sound of boundaries closing softly like a well-fitted door. I sat by the fire holding my new house keys, the metal warm in my palm. Somewhere, their phones would be lighting up with alerts they didn't understand yet. But I did. Justice, I realized, doesn't always arrive in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through signatures and locked accounts, through a woman who finally remembers she doesn't owe anyone her silence. And that, I thought, is enough. 3 months later, silence arrived first. Not peace silence. The kind that hums between phone rings, between one life closing and another beginning. I had changed my number, but old habits die hard. I still looked at the screen sometimes, expecting Daniel's name to appear. It didn't. Not at first. Then one afternoon Gabriel called. His tone was even as always, but there was a glint beneath it. "It's begun," he said. "They've received the letters." I sat at my new kitchen table in Vermont, a mug of chamomile beside me, steam curling like breath on glass. Outside, the lake was still half frozen, light sliding across its surface. "What happens now?" I asked. "They'll learn quickly," he said. "Every account connected to you has been reviewed." The investigator found multiple transfers flagged for irregular authorization. Their mortgage, half funded through your assets, has entered dispute, and the trust documents have been registered. They can't contest what doesn't belong to them anymore. I exhaled slowly. "So it's real. It's final," he corrected gently. The news reached them faster than I expected. That evening my voicemail filled with messages again. Daniel's voice came first, hurried and breathless. "Mom, we need to talk. The bank froze everything. They say they're investigating fraud. Vic's panicking. Please call me." Another message followed, sharper. "I don't know what you've done, but this is going too far. We're your family." Then his tone changed again, softer, breaking in places. "Mom, I made mistakes, okay? But we can fix this. The kids keep asking about you." I pressed the phone to my chest and let the silence between us stay unbroken. Some lessons can't be spoken, they have to echo. By the second week, Gabriel forwarded me a formal notice. Asset freeze confirmed, pending audit. Their home had been repossessed temporarily for review because my financial contributions exceeded 40% of its purchase record. They hadn't realized how thorough digital trails were, how numbers remember what people try to forget. Victoria called from an unknown number one evening. Her voice, once smooth, trembled. "Evelyn, we didn't mean for it to go this far. We were scared about the future. You have to understand, we thought you needed structure." "Structure," I repeated. "You mean control?" She didn't answer. "I do understand," I said quietly. "You wanted security. You just built it out of someone else's life." She started to cry softly. "We've lost everything." "No," I said. "You lost access. There's a difference." When I hung up, I felt neither triumph nor relief. Just balance returning to its rightful place. Gabriel later informed me they'd retained separate counsel. "They're exploring reversal," he said. "But there's no ground. The paper trail is clean. You acted within rights and reason." I thanked him and ended the call. Then I went outside where twilight brushed the water pink. My neighbor, Margaret, another widow, gardener and quiet soul, was trimming lilacs along the fence. She waved. "Evening, Evelyn. You look lighter today." "I think I am," I said. Over the next weeks, I began to rebuild routines that belonged only to me. Morning walks by the lake. Painting small watercolors of birch trees. Sending handwritten notes to the women's shelter my trust would soon support. Each action small, deliberate, and mine. Daniel tried once more. He showed up unannounced, rental car in the driveway, face pale from a life suddenly scaled down. I met him on the porch. The wind smelled like pine. "Mom," he said, "please. We're living in an apartment now. Vic's parents won't speak to us. I just need to understand why." "Because you taught me something," I said. "That care without respect isn't love, it's dependency. And I stopped feeding it." His mouth opened but no words came. "I'll always wish you well," I said. "But I can't finance your growth anymore. You'll have to earn it." He stared at me, then looked down at the gravel, his voice low. "I thought you'd always forgive me." "I did," I said. "Once. That was enough." When he left, I didn't cry. The gravel crunched under the tires, fading into distance, and the sound felt like closure. By late summer, the investigation concluded. The bank restored full control of my funds exclusively to me. The trust began its first distribution. Scholarships for elder women seeking new beginnings. Gabriel sent a short note. Justice delivered quietly. One evening while sorting mail, I found a thin envelope forwarded from my old address. Inside was a faded photo, the grandchildren smiling in a school portrait. No note, no signature, just that image. I placed it on the mantel beside David's picture. "They'll find their way," I whispered. "Maybe one day they'll understand what it cost me to stop saving them." The fire crackled softly. Outside, geese crossed the sky in a perfect line, heading somewhere new. I realized then that silence wasn't emptiness. It was space, finally enough space to breathe. I moved into the Vermont house in late September, just as the leaves began to turn. Each morning mist drifted over the lake like breath on glass. I would wrap myself in David's old wool cardigan, step onto the porch and breathe in the scent of pine and wet earth. It smelled like healing, quiet, unhurried, honest. The house was small but perfect for one life. 2 rooms, a wood stove, shelves lined with paperbacks I hadn't touched in years. I painted the walls myself, soft cream and blue. The first time I lit a fire, the smoke curled up the chimney and I thought, this is mine. I found new rhythms quickly. Tuesdays I volunteer at the library, reading aloud to children whose parents work late. Fridays I bake bread for the community center's lunch program. Some days I take my easel down to the dock and paint the reflection of birch trees on water. The brush feels steady in my hand again. People here don't know my story, and that's a gift. They know me only as Evelyn, the woman who always carries a thermos of tea and remembers everyone's name. There is kindness in anonymity. It allows you to start clean. Occasionally the past reaches out. A forwarded letter, a voicemail from a number I don't save. I listen once then delete. Forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't mean reopening the door. It means wishing them peace while keeping your own. In early spring, the first grant from the trust was awarded. A widow in Maine starting a small bakery. Gabriel sent her letter of thanks to me. She wrote, "You don't know me, but your help came at the moment I thought I couldn't stand alone." I placed that letter beside David's photograph. It felt like a full circle, lost transformed into something that grows. Sometimes I still set the table for 2 out of habit. I pour a second cup of tea just to watch the steam rise. The loneliness doesn't hurt now. It simply reminds me I survived. When I walk by the lake in the evenings, the water mirrors the sky so perfectly it's hard to tell where one ends. That's how I feel, no longer divided between what was and what is. Just whole. They thought they broke me, but they didn't. They taught me that love without respect destroys itself. That silence when chosen is power. I live quietly now. My days are simple. Tea at dawn, letters at noon, the lake turning gold each evening. Peace, I've learned, is not given. It's claimed, one decision at a time. Sometimes I think of Daniel and Victoria. Not with anger, not even sorrow, just distance. They walk their path and I walk mine. The difference is, mine no longer costs me pieces of myself. When your own blood betrays you, you have the right to stop the bleeding. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are care. Care for what remains. I still believe in family, but not the kind bound by guilt or obligation. Real family is chosen through kindness, loyalty, and truth. It's the hand that stays when the world goes quiet. They left me at an airport with no return ticket. But I built a new life from that departure. If this story found you, stay, subscribe, and listen where silence becomes strength.